country.
Hi, my name is Aytekin, welcoming you from Verso Talk podcast. Verso means unseen and untold. The main goal of this podcast is to tell untold stories of immigrant women leaders and also educate immigrants on investment, fundraising, and everything related to money to help them become financially free leaders in America. Mala is a femigrant from India and she is a VC venture capital investor. She works at Progressive Ventures venture capital firm. Today our guest is Mala.
I landed in the country with about a $50,000 student loan, and I landed in '98 at the expense of aging myself at Stanford University as a graduate student. And about 9 to 10 months in, I wrote a business plan with a couple of very entrepreneurial friends who are doing phenomenally well in their careers in the Bay Area. And our business plan won the first place with Guy Kawasaki.
How does the audience react to you being a woman leader, leading all these males in the room?
I mean, people call me aggressive and not likable, and, that I'm not technical enough. And I'm like, yeah, that's selling a dog, not a wagged tail.
So I love to see here ambitious, energetic woman leader in front of me, but I would love to take you back to your childhood. So how old are you here?
I was probably 2 years old. Yeah, well, I'm the youngest of 3 sisters. I used to struggle at home for being heard and being seen, just like siblings, kind of like, we're very close. My sisters live within a 3-mile radius of where I am now. It's a very good relationship now. But as a child, it used to be a struggle to be heard and seen. On the other hand, in school, I was the oldest almost always. And so I was always a leader at school. Well, I didn't realize what a hard journey it actually is.
How hard it is? Please tell us.
Well, it's really hard because you're really, you're raising money and you're investing in people, and you're going to have to show returns, right? Now, you're investing in people, it's not real estate, right? So people are very dynamic and they change all the time. Can you tell me one thing that happened in your childhood that's making you sit here on a Sunday afternoon recording podcasts of immigrants?
I wish my mom could see and watch this video, so I become sad when I talk about them, but this is great. So I think that I can feel proud of myself, even though it's very late because my mom couldn't see it, but I realized her dream.
I think you're setting an example for all immigrants. I feel so proud of you when I'm watching you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your work.
So now it's really authentic. I'm ready to cry. We can finalize it here.
I told you, compassion is my strength.
Working in health tech and biotech, and eventually just became very versed in the early stage startup ecosystem and bounced around about 9 different startups.
Culturally in Asia, when you tell your parents, I am not going to be a doctor, it's a big news.
Right.
How was it when you informed your parents about your decision?
We still ended up doing a lot of the work ourselves, making a lot of the decisions, and that took up a lot of time. So there's other investment banks like mine that look out for these companies that are 3, 4, 5 years away from having an exit, and there's different ways of doing pre-IPO investing.
How old are you here?
I think probably about 5 or 6.
So is it in America or India? What are the changes from, say, 6 years old to 17 and to most recent of you?
Some of the early investments we did were I would say angel investments, because they were early stage ventures. and we just lost all our money, One of the AI women founders has been able to get 200 customers already, and one of the judges asked her, how did you do that? You're an early stage company, you haven't even raised Series A, how do you have 200 customers? Use these kind of like innovative techniques to make your money stretch as far as you can, so you can go as far as you can and then raise that next round and then raise the next round to keep growing. What is your dream as a femmigrant, as a female immigrant? What is your dream for yourself and for your children in this?
Hi everyone, I am Aytekin, the host of the Verso Talk podcast show. Verso Talk features immigrant women investors and founders raising millions of dollars. The goal of this talk is to educate immigrant women on investment and fundraising and inspire them to become financially independent leaders in America. Today, our guest is Mala. Mala is a femmigrant from India, and she is a VC venture capital investor. She works at Progressive Ventures venture capital firm. Mala, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Aytekin.
Awesome,
Thank
great.
you, Aytekin. Thank you, Aytekin.
I know my name is hard. You can
Aytekin,
call me
there you go.
Aytekin or Aytekin.
Okay, thank you, Aytekin.
Yeah, great. That's amazing. So, Mala, very nice to finally meet you in person. And I have heard a lot, and I have seen you joining a couple of events. You also manage events. So it has been a long time for me. I wanted to invite you to the podcast to know more about your personal story and journey as a female immigrant, and also get your recommendations and advice helping immigrant women to become successful leaders in America. Let's start with introducing yourself. Please introduce yourself.
Sure, my name is Mala Ramakrishnan. I'm the founder and managing partner of Progressive Ventures. We invest in B2B AI SaaS companies. And we look for underrepresented founders, and that's kind of my mission. I do run a nonprofit as well. We have about 10,000 AI innovators, primarily founders, executives, and investors in the Valley. And it's just a platform where we elevate underrepresented voices, founders, as well as executives.
Thank you, Aytekin. My name is Shoba Viswanath. I'm a femmigrant from India, like Aytekin said, and I immigrated to the U.S. when I was 5 years old. And I originally lived in Houston, Texas, then moved to the Bay Area at 12, went to junior high school, college at Berkeley. I was a biochemistry major, went on to medical school in North Carolina, then decided about halfway through medical school that it really wasn't for me, so moved back to Silicon Valley, and the tech ecosystem was really starting to boom in the 90s, early 2000s. So I started working in health tech and biotech, and eventually just became very versed in the early stage startup ecosystem, and bounced around to about 9 different startups, everything from fintech, mobility tech, health tech. So I became quite familiar with early stage startup growth, everything from seed to Series A.
That's great. Let's learn about your journey as an immigrant woman in VC world. How did you decide to join investment world, and where are you now?
Sure. I have a pretty unique and lucky, in a lot of ways, my journey. So I landed in the country with about a $50,000 student loan. Mm-hmm. And I landed in 98 at the expense of aging myself at Stanford University as a graduate student. And about 9 to 10 months in, I wrote a business plan with a couple of very entrepreneurial friends who are doing phenomenally well in their careers in the Bay Area. And our business plan won the first place with Guy Kawasaki. It used to be called Garage.com at the time. And interestingly, I had a $50,000 student loan, and the award was $50,000. And within a few months, we'd raised our funding. We'd raised $1 million, incorporated, set up our first company. I was a co-founder. I ran engineering. I was a CTO. Subsequently, we exit by sale. So it was just a phenomenal experience for me to encounter a venture capitalist as kind as Guy Kawasaki, if you met him. And it was just empowering. I was very young. I was only 21 or 22 years, so I didn't know about bias or that I was a femmigrant, none of those. I was just an engineer who was, solving a problem. And in my perspective, a venture capitalist can make or break your life, right? That's what happened with me. It completely broke the mold for me. I come from an ancestry where none of the women worked. They were not allowed to work. And most of the men in my ancestry are professors of economics and agricultural sciences. So here I was where I was just starting a company. And it could not have happened without venture money. And so throughout my last 20 years or more, I've always aspired to do it, but you just get caught with life. So I've founded 3 companies, product companies, and exit them.
Amazing.
And, every time I've always had, unlike what you hear, venture capitalists who've always been supportive in my journey and mentored me and, included me. And I just believe in advocacy. So when I hear that less than 2% of women are getting funded, I think it's my responsibility to step up and make a change because I've been through the journey, the founder's journey multiple times. And I've also been an investor for more than 7 years. I've been a venture partner, limited partner, angel investor. And so the time was right when I decided to do it.
Great. So how was your experience with being that young and getting access to Guy Kawasaki, right? Tell me about that. That's so cool.
Well, if you'd met me then, I was very different. I was very intimidated by most things. And you know what you're like when you're an immigrant in the country. Everything is like, the opposite of what you've seen back home in India because it's a British system. Like the handles open differently, the light switches go on differently, you have to cross roads. And if you go into Costco, everything's so massive. And so when I got that mentoring, it was mostly about building a PowerPoint deck that I remember him talking to me about. And I was thinking, this must be the most important role on the planet for him to be able to give us checks, to be able to build things. And it's also the acknowledgement and empowerment you get when someone says you can do it. That's advocacy, right? And I feel like at every stage in my career, there's always been a male advocate saying, come back into the workforce, come here, I'll give you a check. You can start a company too. And I think that's basically what we're trying to do in Founders Creative, where it's open to men and women, and we're trying to help people grow in their careers, whether it's product or engineering, marketing, or if it's climate tech, healthcare, like different verticals that we truly want to invest in. We support those journeys, and that's basically what I had, right? It was phenomenal for me that someone would believe in me and give me a chance to. I don't know if he still remembers me, but it was life altering for me.
Interesting. So let's go back a little bit further for your journey. You came here to study, right? To study MBA at Stanford?
I did my master's in computer science.
Okay.
I'm a computer science engineer from India, from the southern part of India. And I just applied by chance, honestly. My sister encouraged me to apply because she thought I was very smart. And I didn't know about Ivy, and I didn't know what Stanford was. And it was $50 to apply to Stanford University. So the professor...
Application fee, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the professor who wrote my letter of recommendation said, are you sure your family can afford it? $50 is a lot of money. Why are you doing this? And it was crazy. I got into 9 out of the 10 universities. The only university I didn't get in was MIT.
Oh.
And yeah, so I landed in the country. My first job was getting paid $12 an hour to drive a golf cart within Stanford University, installing computers in the dorm rooms. And I was just, ecstatic. I couldn't believe anybody would let me drive a golf cart, and then drive a golf cart, and that I could install computers. This was like a dream job, right? And that's basically, it's finding the shortest path. That was the first, I don't know if you know the shortest path algorithm. That's basically what everything was for those few years for me in my life, where how would you drive the shortest distance to install the most number of computers? And then the company we built, Aeroprice, was about finding the shortest path for service technicians to go and fix computers in the Bay Area, which won the $50,000 the award. And then after I exited Aeroprice, I worked at Route Science, which is a company funded by Sequoia and Benchmark, which was finding the shortest path for data packets to be routed so that video streaming can be what it is today. So it's finding flaws in border gateway protocols. It's what's spoken by the routers, the Cisco routers. And so we built a hardware device that would find the shortest path faster than border gateway protocol. So,
very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shoba. So you said that when you were studying at a medical school, you realized that it was not for you. I know from different family community members that culturally in Asia, when you tell your parents, I am not going to be a doctor, it's a big news.
Right.
How was it when you informed your parents about your decision?
Well, my parents actually were different in that they didn't really want me to go to medical school in the first place. Like they both came from the corporate world. Like I said, I came as a child. So my parents both spent their careers at PG&E in the corporate world. And they really saw the medical profession as taking too many years to get to a place where you're actually working and making a salary. And they knew the process would be grueling, but I kind of convinced them that I really wanted to go. But then I started having some health issues, etc., when I was in medical school, and they kind of agreed with me that it really wasn't worth it, and that there were other opportunities for me, and it really wasn't worth it.
It's great that you were supported by parents. It's so important.
Right.
Kids, they refuse to chase their dreams because they don't get parent support. Do you think that it played a vital role for you to be where you are now?
Oh yeah, that was probably the biggest turning point of my career. I mean, of my life, because I was in my late 20s when I made that transition from medicine to tech. So that's that was kind of the biggest turning point, because going into medicine, most of my friends who I have from medical school are practicing physicians now, because once you're in that world, that's your whole world, and they're all pretty much, and I'm kind of the only one I know that's branched out and did other things, and so really that was the turning point and the start of everything that would become,
Your journey was different than many immigrants who come with their spouses. They are not allowed to work. You came with student visa. You, together with your co-founders or team, you launched a company, you exited. So this is a great start. Have you ever experienced something that you realized you go through this process because you are an immigrant woman?
Of course, there are processes that we go through because we are immigrant women. But in all honesty, I just feel very grateful. Like if you put me in a Safeway grocery store as a store clerk, I would just be so grateful that I have a job and I can just work. Because women weren't allowed to work in my mother's generation. My grandmother was not allowed to study beyond third grade. So she studied third grade 5 times. And then my mother was not allowed to go to college. So she went on hunger strike for a week. Oh. And that's how she got a bachelor's degree in biology. And so when I look at myself, I'm like, I went to Stanford University. I have an engineering degree from India. And if I can just work, I'm happy. I'm just very grateful that Silicon Valley gives you an opportunity to do anything you want to be and be, there will be bias. And the way I look at it is that everybody has bias. I'm sure I have bias. It's the nature of the human mind is to have bias. And things were against my favor in a lot of ways, but the way I chose to look at it as a response to my background rather than to say it's unfair here. And that's kind of how I think I've become successful over the years, right? If you have a victim mindset, it's really hard for you to be fully functional and to be very useful in the world. Rather, if you can think of all the skills and gifts that you have, and you can be truly grateful every single day, people will naturally crowd around you and help you. I'm yet to meet a single person, whether a white man or anybody really, who if you ask for help would say, sorry, I can't do it. Because everybody wants to just help you. So that's kind of how it's been. I feel like the world is a kind place. And I have been the only woman engineer for 4 years in a company, like many experiences.
How was your experience being an only woman plus immigrant woman? How was it being among all the male engineers?
If you put me in a room full of men, I'm perfectly comfortable. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I went to all-girls schools, that I forget that I'm a girl or a woman, and I'm just functioning from that space of what's the value I can bring to the room, and How can I lead? The safest place for me is at the top. So that's a bit of a problem, right? I don't work so well in structured organizations where I have to be like 3 levels under the CEO. And so that's a problem, seriously. But yeah, I think it's because of the upbringing as well that the safest place is on top. And so if you put me in a room full of men, I'm usually like controlling the audience and getting shit done.
How does the audience react to you being a woman leader, leading all these males in the room?
I mean, I've been, people call me aggressive and not likable and, that I'm not technical enough. And I'm like, yeah, that's selling a dog, not a wag its tail. I mean, I just let it bounce off me. And it's true. I am aggressive and I can be, not as technical as every human being in the world. And that's totally fine. So some of it may be true and it's fine. I mean, I'm okay with it. Call me what you like as long as we get the job done. Right? I'm not there to make friendships. And that's another flaw you find in me, that I don't go into work thinking I'm going to make best friends today at work. I'm thinking about what's the higher purpose that we're here to serve and how can we be useful. I just think that there's very limited time left on the planet.
But how then do you make friendships?
So I tend to gravitate towards Indian women for friendships.
Okay.
And since there aren't too many of them at work, I just find them outside the workplace. And so I'm part of many networks, right? I don't think, when I landed in the country, I think we were 3 Indian women in the graduate program at Stanford University.
What does friendship mean to you? We'll go a little bit different directions on investment.
Well, yeah, friendship means being there no matter what happens to you in your life, right? And being supportive of your positives and being very brutal with your negatives enough to be able to speak up to you about it, that you're able to absorb that information, accept it, and bring change. And so that safety net is not something I seek out at work. It's more, that friendship circle is outside work. I do a lot of volunteering. I teach yoga and meditation where there are a lot of Indian women. In my community, I lead 400 or 500 Indian families in my neighborhood in Palo Alto. So a lot of Indian women, we eat breakfast together, we hang out, we drink tea. So I seek friendships outside. And I don't care about where the person works or what they do when I'm friends with them. That's another important thing for me. But in the workplace, we all care about who we're talking to and what their titles are, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And how would you describe yourself in 3 words? Just 3 key words.
In 3 words?
Yes. And then tell why you chose these words.
I think I'm very driven and very compassionate. I'm a people person. Right?
Let's talk more about people's person.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be people's person?
So I connect very well with most people, whether at work or outside. People think of me as their friend at work. And I am friendly, but it's a little, I keep my distance. And I wish we were, this is like really vulnerable, right? I wasn't planning to speak about this. Yeah, in the workplace, it's good to keep your distance a bit. So that you can maintain a level of professionalism and focus on the outcome and metrics. But that doesn't mean we forget the human side and the compassion. And you can be compassionate without, becoming best friends, which is being very empathetic about where that person's coming from, knowing what their background is, truly understanding how do they work, what are their likes and dislikes, caring about that person. But then friendship goes beyond that. When you're a friend, you're coming home, you're meeting my husband and the kids, and you hear about my parents, and
Nice.
Yeah.
So you said that your preference is always to be on top.
Yes.
Not to have somebody.
Well, I do play a good
leading
number
you.
two. I can be a good number two, but I'm very selective about who I pick to be my leader if I do that.
Okay.
I don't do well where you have like 3 levels of management and I'm a level 8 and then a level 9. And a level
What is your leadership style?
So I'm not a micromanager, right? I build a lot of trust and let people go. So that works really well for people who can drive themselves. So if you put me in with the people who are very junior, it can be a struggle because they need to be taught the trade. I'm not very good at that. I'm much stronger as an individual contributor who's just setting direction and who is giving a very long leash that people come to me if they need direction, which is how the nonprofit is doing very well, right? We have 10,000 people. It's like we have like a dozen people helping operate it. And the venture capital firm too, we have venture partners who are doing it as a side gig. So it's not a lot of authority and micromanagement that I go by. And I can do most things. So I'm very efficient, and that sets the good, I walk in the shoes of the person who needs to do it. And, I lead by example rather than go and tell people how to do it.
Great. So from what I understood, you prefer to keep friendship out of professional work environment. Was there a situation that maybe you gave more chances to be more likely friend with colleagues or like managers, etc., that it affected and it led you to put strong boundaries between your team and colleagues, not to become friends? Was there anything happen in your career that led you to choose that way?
No, it's not like it happened that way. It was more that my mom told me that. She used to tell me when we were young, saying, make sure in the workplace you're able to keep your distance and no one's your best friend, and don't go and talk about all your secrets. But I have made a mistake, right? I've made mistakes. Like co-founders, it's really hard for me to set boundaries that way. Like the last co-founder I had, he's truly my friend. I'm still friends with him. But our company's exit, so it hurt to part ways. Usually it doesn't hurt to part ways when it's just colleagues. And it's much easier if you're just like in the mode of getting work done. And I keep my distance.
I see. That's great. Okay, now let's talk about your childhood.
This is like therapy in public.
So I love to see here ambitious, energetic woman leader in front of me. But I would love to take you back to your childhood. So how old are you here?
I was probably 2 years old.
Okay.
I don't remember that picture being taken.
So, okay. And I also have another picture of you. So this is your family. How old are you here?
I was in, it was just before I started pre-K.
Pre-K, okay.
3 years
Do you remember
old.
this day?
I don't. That's in Kashmir. Before it became a war zone that it is today. And we'd gone on vacation with the family.
I see.
Yeah.
Do you have any childhood memories that you think that it led you to be where you are now?
Yeah, well, I'm the youngest of 3 sisters. And I used to struggle at home for being heard and being seen. Just like siblings, kind of like, we're very close. My sisters live within a 3-mile radius of where I am now. It's a very good relationship now. But as a child, it used to be a struggle to be heard and seen. On the other hand, in school, I was the oldest almost always. And so I was always a leader at school. And I used to be picked because my vocabulary was good, my math was good, I could sing and dance in public. And I think a lot of that molded me, that I still do improv theater.
Great.
And I think being on top is safe. That if I can lead, I usually am in my best self, that I can, I'm comfortable leading.
So it looks like your childhood experience led you to be where you are now, to be on top as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Our family believed a lot in education and empowerment of women, especially my father. He had 3 sisters, and in his world, his sisters, my mother, and the 3 of us daughters were most perfect. He would not be able to see any imperfection into it. It's ridiculous, right? All the way till he passed away when he was 79 years old.
Sorry about your loss.
Yeah, well, you have to die someday, right?
Yeah.
But he always saw perfection in us, and he was always kind, and he always said my mother would do better than him any day if only she was given the chance to work. And he would empower us, saying all of you should get PhDs. And, marriage should be optional. You should never have to be under the thumb of a man. And of course, all of us are married very happily for more than 20 years, each of us. And we have children and all of that. But it really shaped us. And my mother as well, where she always said, if only I could work, I would have been a doctor. And she was really good in the sciences. And she wasn't allowed to, right? It was just frowned upon for women to step out of the house and work. And so in the home, it was very nurturing that my parents always said, you would do phenomenally well. You're all gifted and you're brilliant and you're beautiful and you're bold and capable and you're like dragons and, you know.
This is so vital when you, as a kid, get a support by your parents.
Yeah.
I also grew up in a patriarchy society where I am from small town of Azerbaijan.
Mm-hmm.
It's border on Iran and lots of cultural influences to the city where I was born and grew up. So girls leadership or girls leaders, women leaders were not accepted at all. And but my parents were both well educated. Like your parents, they always encouraged us to be well educated, to go study abroad. And I remember the days when my father found an international program for me in America. He asked me to apply, to try, etc. But his brothers and many other relatives were telling that, why you are sending your daughter to America? So no one will marry her if she goes to America. And my father he also passed away, sadly.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. So he used to tell that if somebody decides not to marry my daughter because she studied abroad, let him not marry to my daughter. So, and like your parents, they always encouraged us to prioritize be well educated rather than getting married early. That is the reason I got married when I was 30 years old. I always postponed it. I had clear career goals. I want to be well educated. I want to study in America. I want to build my career. So. And the parents' support and encouragement is so vital for us to be where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the southern part of India where I come from, it's a matriarchy, interestingly. Even though women don't work, women control the house. So my father, it's usually the men will bring the money that they earn outside the house and give it to the wife or the mother. And she gets to decide how to run.
That's interesting.
Yes. So my mom was always very important and she was in charge and she still is.
She had the money.
She was the boss. She still is the boss. She lives down the road from me in Palo Alto.
Oh, she's in America.
Yes. We moved her. We moved my parents the minute they were waiting for me to get married. The third daughter has to get married. The minute I got married, we moved into the United States because quality of life is better. And we all live within a 3-mile radius so we can take care of each other.
So I will go a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
So is your husband Indian or American? Did you married here or in India?
Yeah, he is of Indian origin and we met here. We were both training for a marathon program where we were raising money for children in India. And he was just cute. He used to run without a shirt and ran really fast and, we fell in love. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. That's great.
Yeah, we met here. And he's from the same background, interestingly. I dated a lot of guys, but this was the perfect fit.
You entered to the tech world and later you transitioned to investment.
Right.
Right. So please tell me about that transition. How was it to make a transition into the world that is dominated by males?
Right. Well, I think one thing is that I have a sister that I'm very close to, and she's a pretty successful attorney. And when I was in the East Coast, leaving medical school and considering different options, she was working in Washington, D.C. as an attorney. And early on, I would say in my early 30s, she wanted to do some investing. She had a lot of money. I had more time. And so we started our investing journey very early. I would say we made some mistakes. We invested in different ventures. There was a real estate venture we got into in Florida. There were a few other ventures that I would say that didn't really pay out. But eventually, when I moved back to the Bay Area, I got into tech. We started tech investing, and we've just put a little bit of money here and there. and eventually our portfolio has grown, and a few of the companies, few of the startups that I was with had early stage exits that allowed me to create a little nest egg for myself too. So I started investing as well. Yeah.
You said that you made a couple of, maybe I would say, lessons that you learned, not mistakes.
Yeah.
What lessons did you learn?
Well, the lessons I learned were basically that you really have to do your due diligence, and that you also have to understand how much time an investment is going to take, because I would say a lot of the investments I make now are managed by other people. Like, I work with an investment bank, so they tell me the companies that I'm going to be investing in, but as far as the due diligence, the follow-up paperwork, a lot of that is handled by them, and when I was in real estate investing, it took up a lot of our time because we were the owners. Even if we trusted the management of the properties to other management companies, we still ended up doing a lot of the work ourselves, making a lot of the decisions, and that took up a lot of time. And so it's really, when you make an investment, you have to realize, and some companies that you make an investment in, they give you a board position, for example. You have to kind of understand the time commitment that it's going to take to be in any kind of investment, in addition to the risk involved as well, because in every investment there's risk, but we've learned to invest with less risk as well.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you learned the lessons that later helped you to manage your time differently, and not to maybe join all boards that you invest to the companies. To any immigrant woman who wants to start investment, what do they need to know to avoid the mistakes or lessons that they can learn through experience?
Right. Well, I think there's different kinds of investments, right? There's the investing in yourself. There's if you're starting your own company and you're putting your own money into yourself because you believe in yourself enough that you think you're going to create something. That could be something, because if it's a success, you only have yourself to. You can congratulate yourself, and if it's a failure for any reason, you can blame yourself. So at the end of the day, I think there's different ways to invest. You can invest in yourself, but if you're investing in other people's companies, other investment platforms, I would say if you have a lot of money to invest, or if you've raised a fund, then you can think about early stage investments. But in general, a lot of early stage investments carry more risk. So unless you've created enough wealth that you can really allocate your money in a lot of different investments, I would say go toward later stage investments that are companies that already have traction, that already are doing 10, 20, 50, $100 million in revenue. And the chances of them having an exit, and that you'll get multiplies on your initial investment, are a lot higher.
If I'm not mistaken, you are investing on pre-IPO startups, right?
Yeah.
Is this the only startup you invest, or are there any other type of?
I do some early stage as well. Yeah, I've done some bridge investing, some early stage as well.
What type of companies for early stages?
I've invested in one early stage fintech company. I knew the founder. I've worked with him about 12, 13 years ago. So I knew him. That was a personal connection. I've also been a part of some crowdfunding campaigns. Those are early stage, but I like those because there's no minimum in how much you have to invest. And so you can take your chances. And one called Sky Quarry that I invested through a crowdfunding campaign through WeFunder is going public, actually. It's an asphalt recycling company.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and my investment in it was small. I mean, because crowdfunding is kind of, the way they do it is they publicize it, and you get to know it through investment advisors, and they get thousands of people to invest, and then they raise millions, and then they go from there, and if it's a success, it's a success. So I've been part of several crowdfunding campaigns as well.
Back to the studio.
Yes.
Thank you, Mala. So I know we paused when you shared your personal story about meeting your love of your life.
Yes.
Now you are a mom of two teenagers, two boys. During these ages, I know it's a lot of work for parents. How does it go to be a mom of teenagers plus be a VC and be busy woman leader? So how does your personal life affect your professional life? How do you manage it?
Well, I'm lucky that I have a great partnership with my husband. He's very supportive of everything that I do. He calls me endless possibilities. It's like, do whatever you like, and it's endless, right? You can change as much as you like. The boys are 16 and 13 years old. So I have a high schooler and a middle schooler. And it's really full, right? Like Friday night, our house is just covered with teenagers, like on every surface possible. So if you don't have much of a life, I think, outside parenting and work. So I usually decline, Friday night parties. Some of our friendships have withered away, which is really unfortunate. But we have each other, my husband and I think we can revive a lot of those once the kids are grown. But yeah, that's kind of how we do it.
What examples did you aim to set for your kids when they were younger?
So, my husband sets a very good example for them because they're boys, that it's a very supportive partnership in every way. Like I used to travel much more than him almost my entire career because I was in product marketing, product management. Then I tried to run companies and exit them. So I've done a lot of sales in my jobs. Like, a couple of years ago, I spent 12 weeks traveling with my co-founder, who happened to be male. And my husband's really supportive that he can do just about anything I can in the house. He can cook, he will do, put away laundry, dishes, and not complain. And most of the time do it better than I can because I think men are stronger than women. They ought to do more work anyway. And, but he's very supportive in that sense. And so the boys pick that up. And in some ways, my husband makes better food than I do. Like when he cooks, it tastes better because he was raised by his grandma. So they're very authentic recipes. And in the beginning, when we were very young and newly married, I've been married for almost 21 years now. And I used to think, oh my gosh, he doesn't like my cooking. And, isn't it the woman's job to be cooking in the house and own the kitchen? I have to share everything with him. But now I see my son's cooking. And I'm like, what a break. Right? So when we travel, we try and do 2 countries a year to expose the boys to cultures outside the United States so that they're not very siloed. So we did Japan and we did Spain. We just came back from Italy, actually.
Great.
A couple of weeks back. And they carry my bags for me and check on me and make sure I'm warm, and they get me water. Of course, they fight, and there's a lot of drama between the boys.
There's no other way without fighting.
But they really do the things my husband used to do, and I used to get annoyed, saying, as if I can't carry my own bag, don't do it. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, I really like it. I like the support now that I'm older, that they,
you are getting your comfort zone.
So I feel like I'm like a princess or something. It's awesome.
That's great.
I used to want a baby girl, and here I am. I'm so grateful for the boys that they take care of me.
That's great. That's amazing. So please tell us, Mala, about your journey being an immigrant woman in VC world. How is your experience? And you have been doing it for how many years?
Well, it's been fairly new. It's 2 years coming up.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Is there anything you learn now that you wish you knew 2 years ago when you just started?
Well, I didn't realize what a hard journey it actually is.
How hard it is? Please tell us.
Well, it's really hard because you're really, you're raising money and you're investing in people, and you're going to have to show returns, right? Now, you're investing in people. It's not real estate, right? So people are very dynamic and they change all the time. And so you have to, it's a bet, right? You're betting on human lives and human minds and products that will change in a market, and you can't be hands-on building stuff yourself. So I'm an operator through and through. I'm an engineer underneath the covers. So it's quite difficult to think that you're going to delegate this to such an extent that you're trusting someone else to show the returns and you're making bets. yeah, so that's the nature of
Has
the
there
game.
been any situation? I know you are very new, 2 years, but in these 2 years, has there been any situation where that situation became like a lesson for you to learn with the decisions you made or your team made?
Yeah, well, I'm realizing that people who gravitate towards our fund are people who look like me. And so we have a lot of female investors. Also, I'd say a lot of immigrants, people of color. It's very diverse. Some people are Caucasian. But the point being that I didn't realize that I would attract this community. You don't know what you're going to attract, right? There's we have people from Azerbaijan and it could really, Indonesia, all sorts of places that I would not have imagined that people would join us to invest. So I think I'm being an instrument of change in that sense, that, it's becoming possible for people to invest in venture because of me, that they would not have thought about it otherwise. So as part of my venture firm, I run a venture fellowship because a lot of our investors are first-time investors. And in the venture fellowship, I teach them as much as I possibly can on venture capital so that it breaks down that barrier. And they can realize this is another job and what is it like to be in a fund operating it. As a result of which my hope is that maybe one of them will become venture capitalists. Or in the least, when they go and pitch to an investor, it's demystified, that they realize what this venture capitalist is really looking for and how is the person compensated, right? What are their motivations? So the venture fellowship is very, very successful in our venture firm. We're running our second cohort at this time, and I think a lot of people join us because of the fellowship, which is great. Usually fellowships are not run for the investors. They usually, I think interns maybe do it in venture firms. But I said, I'm going to define what I would like for myself that is going to make people successful around me, right? I feel like my journey at this point is to enable everybody around me. I just have couple of decades left, probably. I'm in my 40s already. And so I want to empower not just the founders, but also the investors, and everybody, the other venture capitalists who co-invest with me. Everybody needs to win in this game with me. Mm-hmm. And so when I approach it from that angle, then I'm rolling out a lot of training programs and, teaching people everything I know and making my calendar more available. And also for the founders, I'm trying to land them customers or introduce them to the right venture capitalists, for them to get larger checks. So it's a game of a lot of mutual respect and giving. And I didn't realize it was so much of that. So it's a very people person, the job. You can't be like I like to fix codes in a corner and I'm going to be happy. That's not going to make a venture capitalist, I think. Yeah.
What are the three main things you teach?
Yeah. So the venture fellowship, there are 3 parts to it, interestingly. There are 3 terms. The first term is everything about venture, right? The state of the industry is very interesting. If you look at the venture capital industry, it's a very young industry. Most of the venture firms were created after World War II, and it's about 40 years old. And so many of them are multi-billion-dollar companies at this point, right? And so that's the history of those companies, and how does a fund get created? How do you analyze a safe note? Those are sorts of things we learned the first term. So it's like VC 101, I'd say. And then the second term is about a marketscape, to understand market analysis, and then the anatomy of a pitch deck. Because you get very few minutes. I get like hundreds of decks every week that I'm looking at, and we evaluate maybe 100 companies a quarter. So how do you quickly decide that a seed stage investment is going to become a unicorn? So that's what I teach in the second term. So that when they want to evaluate a company or they want to evaluate themselves, when they want to start a company or they want to think about what do I want to be known for? What's the platform I want to be known for in high tech, right? Mm. Then it comes from a space of what's the gap analysis and what's the most meaningful in terms of being able to build something that will make $1 billion in revenues in the next 7 to 10 years. So that's the term 2. Then term 3 is actually about how do you actually do the deal analysis, like the math behind it. What are the different parts that you can negotiate in a deal? So it's a bit like, I'd say, a venture scout who's it's not just networking. It's very deep, right, in terms of analyzing things so that you can actually show the returns that the investors deserve. Like every fund should return 18 to 21x, I'd say. And so you can't just sit on your laurels and say, I'm a venture capitalist, I'm going to, just to get a check out of this. It's really working that. And so that's the third term, which is how do you do deal analysis when you're looking at the math behind the deal? Who are the other investors? Who's the lead investor? What are the terms they've negotiated? What can I negotiate? What are those implications on the fund in the longer term? And so that's it. Those are the three parts to it.
Awesome. You explained it great. What is the process of joining the fellowship program? How long does the program continue? So if I decide to join myself, is there an application form? How can I join?
So the venture fellowship is open only to the limited partners who are investors in the firm. And we can certainly talk about it. We'd love to have you. You have to be able to, I basically want skin in the game, right? If you're investing a check and then I'm talking to you about a deal, you have your own money going to that deal. So you react very differently. You're listening very differently. The networking is phenomenal because these are brilliant people, right? They're technologists in the Valley who've shipped and scaled product. There are CMOs, chief technology officers, CPOs, exited founders, heads of business units. So I value them and highly regard them like I highly regard you.
Thank you.
Right? The experience that we bring is very unique in the Valley. And so I make sure that the time is well spent. And so it's primarily only the investors. So we would offline on it if you're interested.
Yes, I would love to learn about it.
Yeah, that you would invest in the fund, as a result of which you're part of the fellowship. We're meeting twice a month for an hour online. And then we do quarterly lunches and dinners, of course, because people love to hang out. It's just phenomenal. There are friendships being created, and I do everything under the governance of the laws that a venture firm needs to be in compliance with.
Okay, so now I know you are doing lots of events to meet founders and investors, etc. When you meet these founders with the main goal to find the right companies or right founders to invest in, what are the main three particular things you pay attention when you meet the founders the first time at these events?
The big why I look for. Why is this person doing it? Because if you think about the founder's journey, it's a 10-year journey. And a lot of people want to start companies. And the idea matters, but the idea doesn't matter as much as the founder and the founding team. So the first thing I'm looking for is, are they going to stick it out for 10 years to do this? Or is it just, I'm in Silicon Valley, I want to start a company, right? That's the first thing I look for. The second thing is, what is so unique and different about this idea that's really setting it apart? I call it the moat, right? In a moat, in a palace, they'll have deep water with crocodiles, so it's really hard to penetrate it. I'm usually looking for that. In this day and age, it's primarily data access, I think, a lot more than anything else. It could be deep IP, which is few and far between, unless it's coming out of Stanford or Berkeley, I've seen. And I'm always happy to be surprised. If it's not deep IP, then I'm looking for data access that's very unique. That's maybe you need regulatory compliance in order to get access to it, relationships that you have built that's giving you access to it. And then the third thing is the market. Right? What's the market where this person is operating? And can I support this person? What's my contribution? It can't be a market that I don't understand or a technology I don't understand, right? And I understand a lot of technologies. I've been around for a long time now. But I don't invest, for example, very specific domains that are like medtech perhaps would not be a perfect fit for me. But a lot of the cloud infrastructure or, B2B, AI companies, SaaS companies, those are things that I know the ins and outs. Like you wake me up in the middle of the night, I'll teach you go-to-market strategy for your B2B SaaS. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for as a third angle. Like, what's the market? So the founder fit to be a founder, right? The human fit, much more than anything else with the founding team. And then the data moat or any moat that they have, where is it going to be hard to penetrate that and recreate it, right? So that they have some advantage for a while.
Yes.
Awesome. And congratulations on that.
Oh, thanks.
That's great.
Yeah.
So can you please walk us through the pre-IPO investment process?
Yeah. So pre-IPO investing, basically what it means is that you're investing in a company that is later stage, and I would say Series C or Series D. They already have a lot of traction, a lot of revenue. $50, $100 million in revenue already, and they're anywhere from 5 to 7 years away from going public or having a big exit, you know? And I've done most of my pre-IPO investing through an investment bank called Laidlaw. But like my investment bank, there are other investment banks who do the same thing. My investment bank is very entrenched in Silicon Valley. So they really know what's going on in Silicon Valley, and they really know the companies that are really companies like ThoughtSpot and Databricks. And I had some pre-IPO exits with Airbnb and Robinhood, and they really have their pulse on the companies that are going to do really well, you know? And so there's other investment banks like mine that look out for these companies that are 3, 4, 5 years away from having an exit. And there's different ways of doing pre-IPO investing. Like I do it through an LLC where I become a limited partner in several LLCs, and the LLCs contain shares of different companies. And these shares are usually bought on the secondary market from employees who work in those companies who want to sell some of their shares before the exit. So that's one way to do it. But there's other ways to do it as well. Where there's other formats where you can buy preferred shares, and there's bankers who sell preferred shares, and they're not quite in the same format, but you can do that as well. And now there's actually apps. I think Linkto is one. There's another one. It's not coming off the top of my head. But there's other ones as well where you can online for lesser amounts, like through the investment banks. They usually have like $100,000 minimum that you have to do, but through some of these apps, you can actually invest much smaller amounts into these late stage companies. And it's great, you know, if you can put 25,000 into OpenAI or one of these great companies that you feel like has a bright future, you know? So, yeah.
Let's talk about also the risks before pre-IPO. What are the risks when you do investment pre-IPO or buy stocks?
The risks of pre-IPO investing, I would say, are fairly low. I would say the only risks are there's market risks in that if the stock market is really booming, then when a company has an IPO, the stock, when it's released, could be released at a really good price. Then you can make a really big multiple on your initial investment. If the stock market is lagging or it's kind of a downturn like we've had the last few years, actually, it hasn't been the ideal market for stocks to come IPO. Couple things can happen. Sometimes companies will just wait it out and wait for the stock market to kind of be booming again before they do an IPO, or they'll do an IPO when the stock market isn't booming, but it'll be at a lower valuation and a lower price, you know? And in that case, you just don't make as much return. You might not even make any return. I mean, you won't lose your money, but you might just make what you put in back, and your money has been tied up with this investment for possibly a few years to several years, and you might make nothing back, you know? But if it's a good solid company and the stock market is doing really well and the IPO at a good price, then the chances are that it's going to do really well.
And then the third would be what I just said, which is
if the team is not big, do you write angel checks?
I don't. I do only seed stage investments.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have been in this industry for a while. What would be your recommendations for anybody pitching to angel investors to prioritize or focus to be successful and convince the investors they are the right fit?
So, you know, I don't think, so angel investment should not be the first criteria if you're going to start a company. I encourage moonlighting. You know, if you're really passionate about things, would you spend your nights and weekends on it? And go and get early product market fit and validation at your own expense. And if you're able to get $200,000 ARR, at least, get to, 5K a month or some metric so that you're able to see other people who'd buy this product. Then I'd say go to your angels. Because when you go and get angel money, you're basically getting money from people in your trusted circle. And there's credibility at stake, right? It's not just cash for the sake of it. At least a venture capitalist, it's well known that we're doing this for the trade, right? But when you're getting angel money, it's basically your friends and your family who are giving you checks. And so it's credibility at stake. And at every point, it's credibility at stake, whether it's just working a job or whether you're a founder, whether you're raising money. And so I'd say keep it clean. Make sure you're able to generate revenues before you go and try and get venture money or angel money or any money at all.
You mentioned about AI. You invest in AI startups, and AI is like growing and changing every day. And so many AI companies, everybody tries to do something, just adds AI. It's a trend now.
Yeah.
So how do you distinguish AI ideas, because it's so new, that this idea, there is most likely a chance this AI company will work versus to the other AI companies that both of them pitches at the same time?
Yeah, no, I was teaching artificial intelligence at Stanford University in 1999.
Wow.
As a graduate student, because nobody wanted to work that job when I landed in the country, right? Nobody wanted to work in AI. Like, who do AI, right? And I've shipped and scaled more than 6 AI products myself. And even then, it's changing so much that I'm actually enrolled in Berkeley studying machine learning and data science.
Amazing.
And the 3 of us who operate the fund, we're all Berkeley grads who have masters in data science and machine learning. So other than my Stanford degree, this is my side gig, right? I moonlight as a student always. I'm always learning.
So you graduated Stanford and Berkeley? I
haven't graduated from Berkeley yet. I'm still enrolled. I take one course a term and learn as much as I can.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and we have a number of fellows in our program, a couple of Berkeley profs who are part of my fellowship. They want to learn about venture, right?
Great.
So it's awesome. Yeah, yes. I mean, it's a phenomenal community, the fellowship. But what that means for me is that it's very easy for me to have a trusted circle that really knows AI. You can never be the expert at any one thing, right? But you need a community of people who can support you. And so that's what I do. And through Founders Creative, my nonprofit, I have a climate council, I have a healthcare council, we have edtech. We're creating fintech, we have privacy and cybersecurity. And so through those councils, I'm always evaluating founders, but also I have a really solid network of experts in each of those. And it has nothing to do with a venture firm. Anyone can just join us as part of the nonprofit organization. But it's very mission driven, right? That we are focusing on these verticals so that we can go very deeply and understand it and think about the implications of AI. So if you came and pitched to me, I would know what the regulatory laws are that are in privacy, for example. I used to be the head of privacy for WhatsApp at Meta. So I played a lot of bigger company roles to learn those. And so it's easy for me to dip into my network, but also for me to do that evaluation to call out if it's not going to work.
Do you get, with all this great, amazing background in AI, do you get requests from other VCs to help evaluate any AI pitch? Or
No. I don't think they know I exist, or
now they will know. Now you will get lots of requests. Are you ready for it?
That's why I came out immediately when you called me saying, come and do this podcast. I was like, I go very deep in work, and that's the engineer in me, and I forget to go and put myself out there. So last year I decided I would post on LinkedIn, and that's how I've started. So I'm slower than you, and I'm like, well, I didn't even know you could rent a studio and do a podcast. So kudos to you. I think you're rocking it in marketing.
You. Yeah, I am slower than you because I am just learning about investment at the age of 45.
Well, we all, we're similar in age, but we all have different strengths and weaknesses. Yes. And I think all of those are important, which is why community matters, right? And you don't have to do it all, and that's the point of it. So as long as you're able to establish very trusting relationships with each other in a community setting where everyone is growing and thriving, then, we all benefit from it. And as a result of that, the founders benefit and the investors will also benefit, that we'll see the returns that we deserve in the market.
Anybody wants to transition from angel investor to VC, what is your recommendation to them?
Absolutely, you should, right? Well, the challenge with angel investing is the risk is really high. You're just writing a personal check and giving it to somebody, and then you'll never see them. The founder, there's no reason the founder is accountable to you and will get back to you in any way, right? A venture firm, on the other hand, you're sitting on their cap table in their preferred stock. You're not just inside some special purpose vehicle on their cap table. And so they're accountable to you. You're able to get quarterly reports out of them. And the larger the check sizes, you could land a board seat. 15% of publicly traded companies don't have a woman on the board. They're not in compliance with the law. The reason they're not in compliance is because they're able to get away with it, saying not enough qualified women. And so it's very important that women step up and become venture capitalists and invest in venture firms, because then there's your chance to get into a board seat, win an advisory role, right? That's kind of how it may start. But as a result of that, you can build your portfolio of companies that you've been a board advisor on and then a board member on. And then you can make it to the public markets, and maybe one of your portfolio companies will become publicly traded. But that's very important because the board determines the success of the CEO and what the culture of the organization is, how data rights are leveraged within the organization, the governance, all of that, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's very important that we step up, and that's the highest level of leadership if you think about it.
Interesting thing I want to know, how much influence do you have when you are on a board and also a VC to impact the company culture?
Well, the seed stage companies are right. They don't typically have boards. It's too early. But typically the board is what controls the culture and everything, right? You have there'll be different committees that get created. Mm-hmm. Culture could be one of them, ethics and culture, right? Yeah. And the board gets to play, the members get to play different roles in those committees and come up with what would be the precedent for that organization. And so it's a very important function. And that's what you can, fire the CEO, or, you can see that the next person who gets hired in that role has to be a femigrant, right?
That's great. I love it.
That's what we need. We need to be, I told you I have a problem that I need to be in the highest seat. So I can't be president because I wasn't born in the country, right? But I tell my boys there's always a chance, right?
You can be VP. Right.
I'm too techie. I'm too focused on the Bay Area and Silicon Valley and AI and machine learning. I'm like,
we need you here. Yes.
I'm like reading the DeepSeek white paper. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now let's talk about your personal journey.
Yeah.
You said that you moved here when you were 5 years old.
Right.
Do you remember anything from your childhood before that time back in India?
I remember I have like slight memories that go through my head. We lived in Delhi. My dad was an engineer in Delhi. And I have a few memories from my childhood. Yeah. And my grandparents had a house close by, and I remember we'd go visit our grandparents sometimes. And so I have a few vague memories. And then I also have, because the first international flight I took was when I was moving to America at 5 years age. So I remember being on that, it was a Pan Am flight, Pan Am jet that we flew. And I remember being on the airplane coming from India to America, and at 5 you really don't know like what you're getting into or what to expect, you know, but you just know that you're like your parents are telling you that you're going to a new place and that you're going to have a new life, you know. So it's kind of it was kind of fun riding on a plane, at 5 years old. So
so I have here your childhood picture. I want to show it on the screen.
Okay.
How old are you here?
I think probably about 5 or 6.
So is it in America or India?
This is America.
Okay. Do you remember this day?
I don't remember that day, but I think it's probably like Sears or something, given the background. I think they used to, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to have like these photo studios in the Sears that you could go and you go and sit your child there, and then they have different backgrounds you can choose. So given the background, I'm thinking it was probably a Sears photo or something,
So and here, how old are you here?
Probably 16 or 17.
Okay, so what are the changes from say 6 years old to 17 and to most recent of you?
Yeah. So when I first came to America, like when I was 5, I didn't speak I spoke very little English, but I learned English really fast. And I adjusted to American culture. I would say by the time I was in high school, I had pretty much become an Indian American. I would say when I first came from India, I was Indian, but by high school, I was an Indian American, And I had all my friends were American. A lot of my friends were Caucasian usually. I had learned from them like what the customs were. I mean, like in India, it's not very customary to date and things like that. Like my parents had an arranged marriage. But I learned from my friends that it's okay, even in junior high or high school, to start having boyfriends and things like that. And I was kind of a little cautious with that because I know my parents didn't really approve of things like that. But I learned a lot of those things from my school group and my social groups and my friends. So I would say by the time I was in high school, I was pretty inculcated with the American culture and American food and American. Even though I was vegetarian, I was, I started eating pizza and all the things and going to parties and the different things. So I was pretty much inculcated, and then I would say up to now, from high school to now has been a huge journey. In high school, all I was thinking is I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor because I would say in the 1980s when I was in high school, I lived in Walnut Creek. My parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. And the only successful people I saw around me in Walnut Creek were doctors, And I saw my parents had a reasonably successful life, but they had some struggles. Like my dad lost his job a couple of times before he got hired at PG&E. And so seeing them and the corporate struggles that they had, I just thought, well, being a doctor is not only makes you successful, but it's also a stable career. You don't have to worry about losing your job. And then it's also a way to give back and not be in the corporate world. And so I saw many advantages of that. So that's all I was thinking, like in high school. I mean, I just have to do well. I just have to get good grades so I can get into a good college. And then in college, it was all about just getting good grades so I can get into med school. And then med school. And then until I had that major pivot in my late 20s to get out of med school and get into tech, that was all my life. It was just like how to become a doctor, how to keep doing the next thing to become a doctor, and that was all that was trained in my mind. And then when I got into tech, then it was when I threw myself into tech, it was kind of like, forget about all that. I've been training myself for the last 15 years and just start learning everything I can about tech, how to do product management, how to talk with development teams, how to do product market strategy, how to talk to customers, all that early stage startups need to do are completely different skills. But I ended up having a lot more fun doing that than what I was doing in medical school.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So when you look back at your younger self, what are you grateful for?
Well, I mean, I'm grateful that my parents gave me enough stability and enough groundedness. I don't specifically think of myself as very religious now, but when I was raised with the Hindu religion. And one thing about that is that it makes you kind of think that you need to be a good person in your life and create value to the world and do something good for the world, And I think I'm also grateful that my parents took me back to India a lot while I was growing up, so I could see how much better my life was here versus how people lived in India. And I really was like, how can I make myself successful enough that I can give back to India someday? Because I'm so lucky that my parents brought me here, you know?
You know, sometimes we discuss the same thing with my husband.
Yeah.
We tell that we should take our kids back to our country.
Yeah.
So they value what they have.
Yeah.
Because when you are born with these things, it becomes natural to you.
Yeah.
For us, we don't take anything for granted.
Yeah.
So your parents might feel very resonated with my story because we start at the middle of our career, we leave everything behind, and then come here, start from scratch, etc. Right. So I like how you brought up that taking our kids back to our country. Yeah, it really helps to the children to better understand and value what they have. Yeah, and you said that you go back to India, but I know that you also do social impact related projects back in India.
Yeah, that had started recently. I used to go back to India every 4 or 5 years while I was growing up. And then even as a young adult in my 20s, 30s, I would go back every 4 or 5 years to visit grandparents or visit aunts and uncles. But it's very recently in the last 4 years that I've gotten involved with a nonprofit which supports children's education in India. And through that nonprofit, I've started going to India every year and visiting. We support hundreds of NGOs on the ground that promote children's education for impoverished children. So I go to India every year to visit several of our projects. And that's been very eye-opening and life-changing as well, because when I went to India to visit when I went to visit India all through growing up to visit relatives and stuff, it's one thing to stay with your relatives and you see some poor people on the street here and there, but it's another thing to actually be involved in this nonprofit work, and they take you to these villages where, you know, they have a problem with even getting enough water. They have it's a really like water shortage or growing crops, and it's very hard for them to get any kind of medical care, and the kids have no access to school, so they bring the schools to them. And being kind of entrenched in this kind of nonprofit work kind of opens my eyes a lot more to what's going on there, you know?
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So you travel around the world. You visited Azerbaijan, Georgia, Scotland. These are the countries I remember you said. Uh-huh. So I'm sure that it was a business-related trip where you met with startup founders, investors, right?
Right. So Scotland was all business related. We met with accelerators, other investors, as well as startups, and learned a lot about the startup ecosystem. It was put on by this organization called Sustainable Alpha in partnership with Scottish Enterprise and the Scottish government. So they got a group of investors, many from Europe, many from America, together, and we traveled around Scotland for a week. It was a very intense week. We met with a lot of accelerators, but I felt like I got to know the Scotland ecosystem a lot more, and I also became the other investors that I traveled the world, traveled Scotland with, we all became really close, like a family, and so I feel like I can reach out to those investors anytime also. So we had formed really close relationships, you know. And then in Baku was amazing because they hosted the United Nations Climate COP conference this year, and I was lucky enough to be invited through some connections to give some speeches there at the COP conference. And I was hosted by an Azeri family there, and they own a lot of properties there, etc. So a couple of American friends who also spoke in the COP conference, and I were hosted there, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful being a part of COP, being a part of the United Nations. I'd never been to a conference that happens on a world scale, and these United Nations conference, these World Health conferences, like Davos, these conferences are huge and world conferences, and I'd never been to something like that. So it was happening on kind of an immense scale, and I also didn't know too much about Azerbaijan. So So seeing how quickly it's developing and seeing how quickly, they're trying to bring investment, and there's also a startup ecosystem there. And the family that was hosting me, the daughter, she's creating an app that I'm kind of helping her with as an advisor. So there's a lot of investment and startup ecosystem there, and then same with Georgia as well. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
As a woman investor advisor, traveling around the world, coming back to Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
did you bring new ideas with you? What is missing here that you experienced in those countries you traveled?
Well, what I think is missing here is that, especially with the current, I don't want to get into politics, with the current administration, trying to separate, being very nationalistic. And I mean, we live in one world, and the world is becoming smaller and smaller. And most of the big tech companies here hire talent from Eastern Europe, India. It's all common now. So they have employees all over the world that are working for them. So to divide ourselves and say that we're only America and that we're only going to do things because we're America and we're so, other countries are catching up very fast, and we need to learn that. And other countries have a lot of brain power, and they're going to be creative in how they grow as well. And I think in India right now, there's still a lot of poverty, but I think we're going to see a lot of change in the next decade or two. They're catching up, and in other countries as well. So I think it helps. I'd like to think of myself as a global citizen, and traveling a couple months a year helps me feel that way, helps me kind of feel like I'm living in other countries as well. And someday I'd like to even spend more time in other countries.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't think I would be a fit.
When you mentor founders to help them succeed, no matter if you invested in them or not, you just mentor, what are the main advices you give those founders to succeed? What skills do they need to gain? What personality do they need to have to win?
Sure. Yeah, I think the first requirement is that you fall in love with the problem. Okay? It's not about getting the founder title and the C-level title, because it's a job that's really hard. You're not going to get paid to do this for the rest of your life, right? Possibly, right? For the next 10 years, you're just going to be getting money out of customers and investors in order to pull this off. So you need to be madly in love with this problem. Like I'm madly in love with this mission of, seeing more women go IPO on Wall Street. Like if I could get one woman to go IPO every year on Wall Street for the rest of my life, I think I would have lived a good life. Right? You need to fall in love with that problem that keeps you up at night, and that you'll do anything it takes. You don't have to know everything about it. You can learn everything you can about it, but you will do that learning only if you fall madly in love with that problem. And if you fall madly in love with the problem, everything else will fall in place, right? Because to solve that problem, then you'll get the right people to help you. And those people will be your co-founders, your employees, your investors. The minute it's not a fit to solve the problem, you'd say, well, it's not a great fit, let's part ways. It won't be that you're just doing it for the title or the seat.
Yeah. What are your recommendations to founders who are raising funds?
Well, to founders that are raising funds, I would say don't take it lightly that you're taking investment from someone who's giving you their money. I would say use it very responsibly. I went to a women founders event just a few nights ago, and there were a lot of AI women founders there. And one of the AI women founders has been able to get 200 customers already. And one of the judges asked her, how did you do that? You're an early stage company. You haven't even raised Series A. How do you have 200 customers? And they have 10 Berkeley interns working for them, and she's like, we really leverage the use of our interns more than more companies do, So I would say just like be really prudent with how you use your money, and be really diligent, like, you know, just take it seriously. And the investor also will understand that you really have some milestones that you're trying to achieve, and that you're going to keep raising money, and that you're going to keep growing the company, and that they're not going to lose their money, and that you're going to do everything in your power to make it work, you know, and use these kind of like innovative techniques to make your money stretch as far as you can, so you can go as far as you can, and then raise that next round, and then raise the next round to keep growing.
So what do you know now that adds so much value to you that you wished you knew 5 or 10 years ago? 5 years ago, 10 is too many years. So
something I know now that I wish I knew 5 years ago. Yeah. Something I know now that I wish I knew 5 years ago is that there are ways to help companies because I would say 5 years ago was kind of when the pandemic started. And up to the point that the pandemic started, I was working at different startups and trying everything, giving it all I had, giving it 50, 60 hours a week to trying to make the startup I was working for grow. And I was tied to the success of those startups and thought the best way to make money was to help those companies that I was working for grow. And now I've kind of actually realized in the last 5 years that if I can be a smart investor and take the money that I have and focus more on growing that money, that can actually make me more successful than just spending all my time, you know, chugging the wheels and not going anywhere with the startups.
So does a smart investor mean spending less time, being less involved to the company growth, or is there anything you would like to add when you say smart investor?
Well, I mean, I think it's different being involved as an advisor and I think all that operational experience at all those different startups was very valuable. So I won't say that I should have never done that, because having all those operational experience, when I meet a new founder, I've already done a lot of the things they're doing. So when they have a question, I can answer it very fast. And in a very short amount of time, I can add a lot of value to what they're trying to create, you know? But I wouldn't have that if I didn't have that experience. So I don't say I don't wish I didn't have that. What I'm saying is now I've just learned that value creation I can do it in a different way. I can do it by mentorship and do it by coaching and do it by investing, you know?
See.
So yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So Shoba, please tell me about your experience when you decided to pivot to IPO or pause more on angel investment and do pre-IPO.
Yeah. I wouldn't say there was ever a pivot to pre-IPO from angel investing. I would just say that some of the early investments we did were I would say angel investments, because they were early stage ventures, and we just lost all our money, you know? And I think if you're really careful and you really believe in a founder, I would say it's not that it doesn't have to happen to everybody. And some people do early stage investing and make 1,000x return because there's a really great founder and the company really takes off. There has to be a lot of factors. But for us, when we had losses, we just realized it was safer. Even though the growth of the money would be slower, we realized it would just be safer to do pre-IPO.
What were the red flags at that time? You didn't realize that later you lost money.
Well, I think red flags is that we were really trusting, and I've always been really trusting of people. And
did you know them in person, like personally, before investing?
Personally, yeah. And I would say some of the founders of the companies, the things they told me, I just believed them, and I just didn't really do a lot of due diligence and really figure out if it's something that could work out. And I just believed what the founder told me, and then it ended up not working out, so.
Didn't work out because the idea wasn't great, or the founder failed? What were the reasons?
Well, one investment specifically, I would say, didn't work out because there was some other follow-up investment that was supposed to come on through that never came through. So once they ran out of resources, the company kind of disillusioned. There was also some problems with actual operations and logistics of the business. So I would say it wasn't necessarily the founder, except that the founder had not had any previous experience in doing something like that. And then there were other factors that came to play as well.
I see.
When
founders pitch, what are the 3 main checkboxes you check?
Well, a founder's pitch, I would say the product market fit, I would say the team, and I would say traction.
What about the culture of the team or personality of the founder? Do you take it into consideration?
Yeah, that's part of the team. Yeah.
Part of the team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of the team is understanding the team, like who they are as people, have they known each other before? My nephew, for example, has a very successful unicorn company right now. And he and his co-founder had a previous company before this that they ran for 10 years. They have a 15, 20-year relationship of knowing each other. They were Stanford graduate school roommates. So the personalities of the co-founders, the personalities of the early employees, how well they're going to gel together and really make something grow. That's really important.
Was there a time when you refused to invest because of the team? Idea was great, traction was great, but the team was not there.
Well, like I said, I don't do that many early stage investments anymore.
Do you think that investors do it? Because all 3 has to be there. If idea is great, right, and they already have traction, but the team is shaky.
Yeah, I would say more and more investors are putting more and more importance on the team versus everything else. Yeah, the more and more investors that I hear from these days are putting more and more importance on the team. Yeah.
So can you please clarify what do you consider when you say the team is a high priority? What type of team do you wish to see when you invest?
Well, I think I would say, let me speak for investors in general, since I don't do that many early stage investments. But I think investors are looking for founders who may have a background in the specific market that they're going into. So either educational background or work background. They have some history of the knowledge base that they're going to, or the market that they're going to after. They have some advantage over another founder over that market space. So their expertise is one thing. And do the expertise of the key founders kind of gel with each other? Is there one technical person? Is there one business person? Is there one really good at raising money? Is there like a really key team whose skill sets kind of jive with each other to make a company really grow fast, And so I think there's the previous expertise as well as the expertise that the founders have that'll make them gel and work together.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
We are almost ending our show. And as a format of this podcast, you can ask me one question.
Okay.
But I recommend not to ask what is the goal of Verso Talk because I have already answered to ask questions, people will see it. Yeah. So any questions you would like to ask me?
Oh, sure. What is your dream as a Femigrant?
As a founder of Femigrant Foundation or as a host of the Verso Talk.
No, just what is your dream as a femmigrant, as a female immigrant? What is your dream for yourself and for your children in this country?
This is great. So for my children is to leave my footprint, that when they talk about their mom or recall memories, they see that their mom built a community, made something impacting lives, and they get inspired. So they learn from their moms that their mom never gave up, no matter how challenging situation I faced at some time. So also they become bold leaders, successful leaders, happy girls and women in the future. So these are my dreams, to raise happy, bold, powerful girls and future women in life.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are ending. Is there anything you would like to add as a suggestion or advice to immigrant founders?
To immigrant founders, especially in today's day and age, I would say don't give up. I would say being an entrepreneur is a very important part of our economy, part of the world economy. And there can be challenges. There can be visa challenges, especially coming to America. There can be immigration challenges, visa challenges. But if you have the vision, don't give up and do whatever you can to make it work. Because if it's going to work anywhere in the world, you have the best chances of making it work here. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was such a nice pleasure to have you at our podcast. And thank you all for watching us. Today our guest was Shoba. She is an advisor, investor, and a femmigrant from India. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the biggest advice I can give anybody.
Less than 2% of women, they get investments. You just brought this up. And what we need to do to help women, especially immigrant women founders, because we come with lack of resources, so many things we need to learn, to explore. What advice would you give them to increase their chances to get investments? How we can increase the number from 2% to 20%?
Yeah, I think, in the first place, more women need to step up to start companies. I don't think there are sufficient people stepping up. And fall in love with problems that are going to go. So this is not the mom and pop shops, right? This is not services. And that's the other challenge, I think, that we land up picking problems that are not venture scale. So, you know, there are things that you can control, and then there are things you can't control, right? Sandal is not something we can control. And there may be bias, who knows, right? I'm not going to deny it, but I'm not going to accept it and let it rule my life. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything that I can in order to succeed. And that's what I would like for my founders to do, to think, what can they do in order to succeed? And for that, they need to pick venture scale problems. So if you pick a problem that's going to make $1 million today, then what does it take to become 2 and then 4 and then, right, exponentially get to 100 in 7 years or 10 years, 7 years max, in order for you to be venture scale. And that's what people miss out when they say, I want to become a founder. So I'd say first is we need more women wanting to become founders, and founders of venture scale businesses. And then fall in love with that problem, that you're madly in love with it. And it might be something like, I don't know, digital transformation, like IT infrastructure transformation. And if you're going to be bored by that, that's not your baby, right? You have to be madly in love with saying, how can I automate the financial analysts on Wall Street, that they don't have to work anymore, that my product's going to replace it. That was one of my companies, right? And that's basically what you have to do.
Awesome, great. We are almost finalizing our show. As a format of this podcast, you can ask me one question, but I already answered the questions that I can tell you avoid. The goal of the Femmigrant Foundation, the goal of the Verso Talk, because it will be repetitive for people to watch. Besides that, one of the questions was like, where I see myself with Verso Talk after 5 years. Anything besides this, you can ask me still, But just wanted
Can you
to
tell me one thing that happened in your childhood that's making you sit here on a Sunday afternoon recording podcasts of immigrants?
Very great question. You took me really exactly to my childhood.
Uh-huh.
When I was ages around 10, 12, together with my mom, we were watching VOA News of America, and there was Azerbaijani journalist. Her name is Dilshad Aliyarlı. My mom called me, and I said, Aytekin, come here. She's Azerbaijani woman. She speaks English fluently, and she runs news media channel. Look how brilliant she is. Every night, or maybe once a week, when the show was live, she was calling me and asking me to watch her and get inspired by her. She adored her, and there was a time she told me, Aytekin, email her and ask her questions, how she was able to make it to VOA News, because she's from Azerbaijan and her English is brilliant. At that time, I never imagined that one day I will have a podcast.
Yes.
Right? But I was impressed because my mom adored her. She planted seeds at that time that when I look back to those years, now I recall, wow, my mom helped me to see something later, maybe after the ages of 45, that I didn't realize at that time.
Beautiful story.
So,
amazing.
yeah.
Look at you. I think you're better than that newscaster.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Congratulations. Amazing story.
Yeah. Great question. Thank you. You took me back to my childhood memories. Sadly, both of my parents passed away.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I wish my mom could see and watch this video. So
I'm sure
I become sad when I talk about them, but this is great. So I think that I can feel proud of myself, even though it's very late because my mom couldn't see it, but I realized her dream.
I think you're setting an example for all immigrants. I
Thank
feel
you.
so proud of you when I'm watching you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your work.
So now it's really authentic. I'm ready to cry. We can finalize it here.
Beautiful. I told you, compassion is my strength.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming here on Sunday. Thank you so much. So today our guest was inspiring, empowering, and amazing leader Mala. She's a VC investor. Thank you so much, Mala.
Thank you.